Hey everybody, welcome. Just gonna give the stream a second to catch up. How's everyone doing? It's Thursday, and it's time for the Monster Workshop stream. I'm just gonna check my framing, so we're probably gonna get a little bit of delay on the video, but it'll catch up as soon as I can minimize my window. So let me just make sure I'm well framed. Yeah, we're gonna be like over here. That might be too far. Very tiny window of space that I can squeeze into. So like maybe like that. I don't like the way that makes the wall look. So let's do this. It feels like I should have done this before the stream started, but I had forgotten I've recently changed my setup here. Okay. So once again, it'll take a second for the delay to end, so just a moment more of your patience. Great, awesome. How's everybody doing? Welcome. It's Thursday. David is tired. He's ready to leave work. I feel you, David. Thanks so much for coming, man. You are so consistent with these streams. It's always nice to know that I'll have someone to talk to, and that someone is my good friend, David. Great. Yeah, I feel you. I'm just getting back to work after taking yesterday off, and I'm already tired, and I'm not looking forward to the rest of the week. But that's okay. This is my productivity week. I'm going to be super productive. I'm going to get a lot done. And one of those things is the Thursday Monster Workshop streams. Thanks for coming out. If you've not seen one of these before, basically what we do is we take a monster from the monster manual, usually the monster we just covered last week in the podcast Monster of the Week. Check it out at the link up above. And we look at some problems that the monster has and its design, and then we talk about ways we could potentially improve the monster. I forgot to grab my monster manual. I have my water, but I don't have my monster manual. So I'm going to go grab that, and I'm going to be back in like 3 seconds. It's very nearby. I'll be back in 1 second. And then when I get back, I'm even going to remember where I'm supposed to sit. Because a lot of these streams, I end up sitting in a weird position. But I think this is about right. It helps you finish some work days. Well, that's great. So happy to have you, my man. Thanks for coming. That's my framing. Framing's pretty good. Okay, cool. So last week, we just came back from hiatus on the podcast, and we released our first episode. I'm going alphabetically through the book, unless a guest has a particular favorite monster, and then we go kind of jump to them. So we are just beginning the sea monsters right now, which begins in the 5th edition Monster Manual with the Cambion. Yeah, it was a quick episode. I like these shorter episodes. There are some monsters like we did the Beholder and the Mind Flayer recently. We've done, episodes on like angels, which is like a larger category of monster, right? And those tend to be a little longer because there's just a lot more to cover. There's a lot more like sort of moving parts. So I actually have kind of a soft spot for monsters like this that are like a little simpler, like 1-page monster entries, because then the podcasts are shorter, they're easier to edit. It's a simpler idea. You don't have to try to cover a whole bunch of different sort of side topics. Like you can't really talk about mind flayers without talking about, tadpoles and elder brains and cranium rats with elder brains and cranium rats and things like that, right? So the Cambion, this week's monster, is a great example of kind of a shorter 1-page monster. The big twist with this episode of the podcast is that I don't really like the Cambion. If you don't know what a Cambion is, they're a little bit more of an obscure monster. They are from all the way back in 1st edition, but basically the conceit is that they are the child of a fiend and a humanoid. Usually a human. I think they're kind of implied to often be the child of a human and like a succubus or an incubus, right? Because they're sort of tempters and temptresses, and so they are more likely to procreate. Yeah, dude, David, I haven't even thought about the dragon episode yet. Like, we have devils and demons coming up pretty soon. Both devils, demons, and dragons are all in the D's. And, like, I really don't know. Like, do you do an individual episode on each color of dragon? Because that seems too much, right? You definitely don't do it with each individual type of devil or demon. But it also seems like you don't want to do, like, a 2-hour episode where it's, like, trying to cover every type of devil and what's good and bad about it. So, like, I really have not figured out what I'm going to do for those yet. And it's like, well, that's in the D's. I'm still in the C's. That's far away. I won't worry about it. So we're going to see. That's a great question, David. I have not solved that puzzle yet. I think dragons, I think you really feasibly could do an episode about each individual color of dragon. I did a project, one of my first monster redesign things that I was doing. When I was first kind of discovering, like, hey, my favorite part of D&D is monster creation. Was I redesigned a bunch of I redesigned all 5 of the chromatic dragons to make them a little bit more exciting to run. And so, like, I've been using those in my games, and so far they've gone pretty well. I've only used one, and we're going to use another one coming up in my home game. But, like, my point is, I could probably talk about a white dragon, or a blue dragon, or a green dragon for 15 minutes. Like, yeah, that wouldn't be that hard to do. But it's the devils and demons. I don't know if I want to talk about a Barlgura for 15 minutes, you know? And then you'd also get stuck in this thing where it's like, okay, so for the next 30 episodes, we're just talking about devils and demons. Right, like in different types of them. Maybe I'll group them up and be like, hey, this week we're gonna cover, you know, 3 different types of devils and then it's like 3 devil episodes. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the Cambion. And so the idea, as I said, is just the offspring of these fiends and a humanoid. And they've existed throughout most of D&D, but the problem is that, like, I don't love them. I think they're a little bit weird from, like, it's an interesting idea for a character, but like as its own kind of monster, I am just not that engaged by the concept. And so part of the challenge was, that's the first problem we're going to talk about here. We have 3 big issues that I try to find 3 things with the monster that I feel like don't work as well, or things I would change, and then try to propose solutions for those problems, or things we can do to make the monster a little more engaging to run. If 5th edition has a problem for me, I think it's that the monster design, like, falls back on theater of the mind and therefore avoids narrative combat. Like, 4th edition had a lot, it's a little too tactical, but they were trying to go out of their way with every monster to say, like, what is the unique thing that this monster does? Even if it's like a subtle thing, it's like, okay, this thing has like a terror, you know, ray that it can shoot at an individual person, make that one person afraid of it, right? And it's like a ranged attack. Okay, well, that's, no other monster has that. I feel like 5th edition, its big, like, monster, it's like big original sin of monster design is that it's returned to CR, and then B, like, it is kind of fallen back on, like, what if the monsters just attacked you? And that was it. Maybe they have one other little extra thing. And I think the Cambion is a great example of that. So the first problem, though, that we have to get over is that I don't think that there's that much interesting or like, there's not a lot of narrative really around the Cambion. Like, the core conceit of it is really interesting, right? This is at some point, a fiend and a humanoid had to couple and create this person, and now they're, like, you know, presumably an adult and running around, and this, like, they've got the sort of, like, the mortal free will and stuff that like a humanoid would have, but they've got a lot of power and maybe potentially immortality. Like, there's just not a lot of information in here about, like, the actual lore of the Cambion, right? Like, do they live on Earth? Do they live in the 9 Hells? There's just not much going on there. And it's hard for me to look at this monster and think, like, this is what I want to do. Cambions grow into ruthless adults whose wickedness and perversion horrifies even the most devoted mortal parent. Even as a youth, the Cambion identifies its rightful place as an overlord of mortals that might orchestrate uprisings in towns and cities. Like, you could argue that, like, Damien from The Omen, right? Hey, what's up, Caleb? Thanks for coming. Long time, first time. Nice to see you, Caleb. Well, hey, look at how nice that is. Caleb says, howdy, long time, first time. You're right, a lot of monster design in 5e is bland. I like what you've been doing with all these homebrew solutions. That's so nice to hear. Thank you, Caleb. I appreciate you showing up and saying hi. Awesome, yeah. Feel free to stick around. We're gonna dive into it right now. But there's a lot here that, like, is not expressly talked about. Where, like, they say that the offspring of a fiend, usually a succubus or incubus, and a humanoid, usually a human, right? But then they go on to say, like, Cambions grow into ruthless adults whose wickedness and perversion horrifies even the most devoted mortal parent. So the implication there is that, like, the mortal parent is the mother, right? That, like, the person who gives, like, that, like, a humanoid has a relationship with a fiend, and then the fiend presumably leaves. Like, I don't imagine the succubus is, like, living with a mortal, right? So it's like, but then that means it's probably the incubus, if the incubus, you know, is impregnating a human woman, and it's just like, there's all these weird questions. So there's just a lot here that I'm not crazy about in terms of what do we do lore wise. This one especially seems squishy for CR, but also doesn't have many great minions it can have. Most other fiends are just more powerful. David, you know, it's interesting. I wonder if we might have different views on this, because, like, I actually kind of think the Cambion is weirdly powerful. It's a CR5, which means it's 1 CR more powerful than a succubus. Seems kind of strange. And it's, CR-wise, it's lower than things like a Vrock or obviously like a Yoklol or whatever. Looking at the other fiends. But its powers are such that it's got 19 armor class. It's got incredible saving throws. Strength, Constitution, Intelligence, Charisma. It doesn't have Wisdom or Dexterity, which I guess are the 2 most common ones. A lot of good skills. It's got lots of resistances. It's got multi-attack. It's got this smear attack. And then it's got this Fiendish Charm. And this Fiendish Charm is better mechanically than the Succubus one, if I remember correctly. Basically, they can charm one person for 1 day. The charmed target obeys the Cambion's spoken command. If the target suffers any harm from the Cambion or another creature... Oh, it does say or another creature. Oh. I missed that in my episode. I thought it just said, if the target suffers any harm from the Cambion or receives a suicidal command. I missed that it says another creature, so maybe they're not as powerful as I thought. Hot take here. Oops. But my point is that, there's just nothing going on here that's unique, right? They feel like a very kind of, even look at the picture. I guess you can see the picture here on the side, but that, it looks like this is the art of, a devil in, a monk's illuminated manuscript, right? It's just, the most generic version of a devil. So, how do we fix that? I've harped on it enough. My thinking is that, you got to reframe narratively what you're doing with the Cambion, and the idea of a Cambion being do we have a place in a story or in fiction for a character like this? And to me, I like the idea of a Cambion as being the spoiled trust fund baby of an arch fiend, right? So they're not just the offspring of any old succubus. You could do that, that's fine, but to me it feels more likely you would get a tiefling. You get someone that has infernal heritage, obviously, and some infernal power, but it doesn't make sense to me that they would just be inherently more powerful than their parent. That adding human ancestry to a fiend makes them better than a fiend. I just don't see that. So my thinking is that the reason that they are so... I really feel like I might have tossed these into the MM as a page filler. I kind of think that too. It's funny because they do have a history. They are in 4th edition, and they're in 1st, 2nd, and 4th. They didn't show up in 3rd edition, to my knowledge. At least not in a published monster manual, right? Which is weird, but it does feel like even in 4th edition, they understood mechanically a little bit more of what to do with them. Where here, it's just I just don't get it. So how do we make it work, though? We're coming from the premise that the podcast and the stream, is about not saying, don't use this monster, it's bad. Saying, how would you make this monster cool? So my solution is that to specifically make the Cambion the child of an archdevil or an archfiend. Could be a demon lord, archdevil, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of options there. But it's not just a rank and file fiend, it's someone who's higher up, right? Which therefore innately gives them more power. It explains why they would be more powerful than, your kind of normal, a bearded devil or a Vrock or a Quasit or whatever, right? Or a succubus, even. And it to me, it makes a lot more sense that an archdevil, there's something very folkloric about, Asmodeus or Mephistopheles or, any one of these, or Zariel or any one of these other archfiends. Again, my brain likes to go to devils because I think a lot of the demon lords and demon princes are pretty horrific and monstrous. You have Beelzebub in the Devils, who is basically a giant slug, so probably not. But, you've got Zuggtmoy and Zweeblex and Orcus and Demogorgon in the Demon Princes, and, a lot of them, Grazd makes total sense. And they even call out Grazd here in the entry, saying that, a lot of Cambions are kind of hanging out in Grazd's court because, he's constantly boning mortals. But, to me, it feels like a devil is much more likely to fall in love with a mortal or, potentially to end up marrying a mortal in a Futurama situation, where you get tricked into it. So, to me, that's more interesting. And that makes a lot more sense to say that they have this kind of infernal, birthright, that they aren't just some fiend. They're the child of a very powerful fiend. And so then you can play them as do you even know who my father is or whatever, right? That they're these spoiled brats who go on go backpacking through the material plane after their college education, just wreaking havoc. And they can cause a bunch of damage and they can get involved in the plots because they know that ultimately, their parents will just bail them out, right? So you get the fun folkloric thing of like, okay, the devil falling for a mortal, but then you also get this like spoiled brat archetype, right? That makes like, I think the Cambion is one of those monsters that like is really screaming to be a villain in a campaign, right? Like a low tier villain. Like if you want to have an archdevil as your primary villain at high levels, like a Cambion, like their child is a great middling low tier villain that can kind of come back and pester them. So that's a lore change, but I think that's going to then kind of ripple out, kind of like we did with the Banshee. It's going to hopefully ripple out into the rest of the powers and abilities. Great, so our second problem then is that the Cambion does not have a unique combat power. If you look across the Cambion, it's got a lot of powers that it borrows from other creatures, which like kind of makes sense if it's sort of half of a humanoid and half of a fiend. But, you know, we don't have to get that strict in terms of, like, what its abilities are. It would be cool to see the Cambion do something unique that no other monster is doing. Like, what is it about a Cambion fight that makes them interesting? And I was struggling with what this power would be on the podcast, and I kind of come to it sort of like bass-ackwards. Yeah, thanks, Caleb. I think it is a little bit more interesting, right? Because then you immediately have to beg the question of, like, which archdevil is it? Like, who is responsible? It's not just some fiend, right? It's like, who, and now they're in the campaign, and what happens when you cross them? And that was a lore thing we mentioned in the podcast, too. Like, we could mention this in the lore. Like, there's a cool idea of, if you kill a Cambion, right, do you, like, earn a death mark or whatever from that particular archfiend? And now that's this like motivating plot point, right? That like you have to now deal with the ramifications. It isn't just, oh, we killed a Vrock and now the Vrock goes back and is a Quasit or however that works. I don't remember, right? That like, okay, sure, you know, maybe this you kill them and they're dead because they're half mortal. They can die, right? But I mean, it's a little Nicky essentially, right? That old Adam Sandler movie. Anyway, point being that they don't have a unique combat power. So we're talking about this in the podcast, and the idea that I kind of slowly happened on was the third thing is I want to expand their innate spellcasting because I find the choices they have to be a little bit pedantic and a little bit pedestrian, excuse me, not pedantic, a little bit pedestrian. And I was thinking, like, you know, you could borrow from the Tiefling playbook. Like, Tieflings get better spells, honestly, at least for flavor. So they've got Thaumaturgy, they've got Hellish Rebuke, you know, they've got Fire Resistance, that kind of stuff. And I was like, Hellish Rebuke is kind of interesting. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought it would be cool to do something where they basically have like a permanent Hellish Rebuke. In 4th edition, the Cambion, one version of the Cambion has like a Hellfire Mantle, basically like an evil halo that protects them. I think it adds to their armor class against like ranged attacks beyond a certain distance, which like is cool, and I'm not opposed to that ability. But, you know, trying to think in 5th edition, that's not necessarily as useful. It's a little bit, like, noodly. One of the problems with 4th edition is that a lot of the powers got to be, like, you know, when you shift, while wielding a spear, if you shift 5 feet away from a prone enemy, you have a +2 bonus to reflex. And it's like, that's so specific. But the idea of, like, an evil halo felt very, like, Illrigger, if anyone's familiar with MCDM, like, the kind of evil paladin archetype, right? Like, I think halos are cool, and I can't really think of monsters in D&D that use them. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about Hellish Rebuke, and I like the idea of them sort of, like, that because they're the child of especially powerful Archfiend, that literally striking them at all, like, dealing any damage to them, results in a blast, right? That like they have this permanent halo of protection around them, right? And again, it's like when like a rich person's child like hits somebody with their car. It's like they're exempt from consequences, right? If you dare, you know, lay a finger on my favored son, then kapow, right? You're hit with this like infernal hellfire. So like that gives it this interesting element of like, oh, you know, what do we do? What are the limits of that? Is it just melee? Is it any attack? Presumably it's some kind of a like a reflex save. David says like the Remoraz's heated body. I think it could be like that, but I think it's even more unique because it's the Remoraz's heated body is like a proximity thing. I think this is literally like if you strike the Cambion at all, you either take a tiny amount of damage or you make a saving throw against you make a saving throw against a larger amount of damage, right? I don't know exactly how you'd mechanize it, but it's more the concept rather than it is the proximity. But yeah, I mean, it's similar to a Remorize's heated body for sure. And then lastly, for the last problem we have is the Cambion's innate spellcasting is a little boring. And I definitely think that that's true. I think we could, I think some of them are okay. So it's got 3 times per day, it's got Alter Self, which at first I was like, who cares? But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, well, it does have like wings and a tail, I guess, like as a utility thing to make a Cambion look like a humanoid. They would have to cast, Disguise Self wouldn't work because, you know, there'd still be the tail and the wings and everything. So that makes a little bit more sense. Command seems fine. 3 times per day feels like limiting for how like kind of useless of a spell command is. Like it has some offensive ability, but as an action, it's not the best. Yeah, Nuker Wolf says depends on their parent for the type of damage. That's a really good point. Also, welcome, Nuker Wolf. Thanks for coming. They have Plane Shift once per day, self only, which, okay. Again, very utility. It feels like it wouldn't really come up. I guess it's a good way to escape a combat. So I'm not opposed to them having it, but I just feel like there's more useful things. And then the one that I find the most offensive of their spell-like abilities, or their innate spellcasting, excuse me, is Detect Magic. Detect Magic as a power on a monster is just, it's just baffling to me. Like, I just don't understand what the function of it is. Like, name me a scenario in which the players are encountering this NPC and they really need, like, oh boy, you know, 3 times per day I can use Detect Magic. Maybe to find an invisible creature, but I feel like just give them True Sight then. Like, what is the context in which a monster needs to be able to detect whether or not there's a magical aura or a magical presence or something? I just, baffling to me that they said, like, okay, let's make sure we include this. I mean, I'm not saying a Cambion couldn't be able to, I mean, that's perfectly fine. They can detect magic, whatever. That's so hand-waveable, though. Like, give me something that's useful, right? Caleb says, the Halo/Aura idea is solid. It could be save against retaliation attack for a melee strike, and advantage or other bonus against a ranged strike. So, like, the aura is highlighting who targeted them. Ooh, that's kind of cool. I sort of like that. Because then they could, like, place the halo on someone else, right? So save against retaliation if it's melee. And that's kind of interesting because it gives it 2 different components, right? You could stay out of range and hit them and not take damage, but then it highlights you and you become easier to hit. Even maybe particularly with Fire Ray, right? I like that. Cool. So those are our things. So I would love to brainstorm some other spells to add. I think a few of them you can pull right out of the Tiefling. I think Thaumaturgy is a no-brainer for an at-will. Right, you want them to be able to, like, boom their voice and, like, extinguish candles and, like, you know, basic stuff like that. I was gonna say Hellish Rebuke makes sense too, but I think because we're gonna bundle that into this Halo power, right, that's less exciting. My brain wants to do, like Alter Self is okay, but I almost want, like, more of a Garden of Eden, you know, like a shapeshift power where they can turn into, like, spiders and you know, snakes and goats and stuff. You know, it'd be cool to do that, to give them like a shapeshift power or like an animal form power that isn't just I can turn into other people, which again the succubus can do. My other idea potentially, instead of doing more spell-like abilities, would be to give each Cambion basically, like, take Fiendish Charm out. What's up, Marilyn Henderson? Thanks for coming. Would be to take Fiendish Charm out, right? I'm not sure, what you're talking about, Marilyn Anderson, but we'll see. Take out Fiendish Charm and say that depending, and I think it was Nuker Wolf kind of began to broach this idea, depending on who their sire is, right? That would then affect the kind of power they would get, right? So originally I was going to go down and say, like, by Archdevils, you know, if you're the spawn of Belial, or Dispater, or Zariel, then you get this power, right? Like, Zariel's child does this. But I think what I would rather do is I would rather keep it broad and say, like, if you're the child of, like, a Conquest Fiend, you know, or a Shadow Fiend, or a Death Fiend, then this is the unique power you get. So we could keep Fiendish Charm. I broke it down by a thing from my homebrew world. So there's, like, a great evil in my homebrew world called Yogg. Kind of like, you know, your sort of Cthulhu meets Satan. It's, you know, an ancient primordial evil that's imprisoned in the world and beneath the crust of the earth. And it has 6 aspects that are kind of like meant to be in mockery of the 6 gods. And so there's like a conquest aspect and a shadow aspect and a death aspect and a secrets aspect, madness and deceit, right? All these different elements of evil. So it's more like, again, like a broad category, almost like a domain, like a divine domain, where multiple demons or devils might have conquest in their portfolio, right? Like if they're sort of a warlike demon or devil, like Zariel could totally have conquest, right? But then some of them might have deceit, like Grazd, who's a demon lord, could be deceit. So keeping it kind of vague rather than being that prescriptive. Caleb says maybe some sort of illusion power to let them create that perfect scenario to manipulate their targets and boost Daddy's reputation. Yeah, I think that's cool. That could definitely be under deceit as well. Great. So let's tuck in a little bit. And that was my thinking, right? Is that way you don't have to, with that power, you don't have to like say, okay, well, now I guess I need Zariel in my campaign. You could say, well, what's a demon I can invent or a fiend I can invent? Oh, great. I'm glad you're a fan, Caleb. That's awesome. I wasn't sure. Yes, plans are in motion. I just had some very good news about that today that I can't share, but we are every day we are closer and closer to the return of All Hell Yogg. So Yogg before all. Great. So let's dive in here. The first thing I want to do is I want to the lore stuff. I'm okay writing. I think that's fine. I can do that on my own. We're going to talk about mechanics. So I'm going to hop us over here to a website that I use that I think is great for these streams. It's called TetraCube. There's a whole bunch of stuff they do. They have a character generator, magic item generator, but the thing I really love the most is their stat block generator. This is a really great way to make just like an isolated stat block for 5th edition. It's got a very like intuitive form. Here, it takes a little bit of tweaking to learn, but then once you get in there, I find it to be super, super helpful. So I have the base Cambion loaded in here, and we're just gonna go through and we're gonna make the changes that we want to see in the monster. So I think most of this is fine. If you guys want to do me a favor, let me actually check my framing because I just scooted in a little bit. Oh, I'm great. Look at that good framing. I might even scoot this down a hair. Oh, maybe that's too far. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, there we go. All right. Sorry for the delay. Whenever I adjust my overlay, my camera on my computer, it's not an old machine, but it's trying to do a lot right now. So sometimes it gets a little bit slow. Great. Okay, so let's dive in here. If y'all want to throw some spell ideas at me, I think that'd be great. I might grab the player's handbook and look at some Warlock spells. But if you want to throw some ideas for potential spell casting options at me, we can maybe punch those in as well. And then we'll start working on the Halo. All right, 3 seconds. I'm just going to grab my PHP. I have a very bad habit, as longtime viewers of the stream will know, of beginning the stream without the things that I fucking need to do the stream. And here we go. So let's look at Warlocks and see. I like Thaumaturgy for sure. You don't probably need anything that's like Eldritch Blasty. It's got the Fire Ray. So like utility, yes, but I feel like we could get some more interesting stuff. Like Hex kind of makes sense to me. Ooh, Crown of Madness. Like Crown of Madness isn't a great spell, but that idea is right, Spider Climb, Suggestion, Counterspell, Fear. I like Fear. We probably don't want to go too much higher than like 3rd or 5th, right? Banishment, Blight, Dimension Door, Hallucinatory Terrain. I like Fear. I like Crown of Madness. I like Hex. We'll put Thaumaturgy, Hex, Crown of Madness, and Fear in there. Ooh, Dominate Person or Monster. I could see that. Dominate Monster is pretty high level. Dominate Monster is 8th. Where's Dominate Person? See, I would almost prefer Suggestion, but we have Fiendish Charm, so I feel like we don't really need. I guess maybe if we're gonna move it aside, right? If we're gonna put that, because like the thing I don't like about Fiendish Charm is it's the succubus's power. That's what the succubus does, and so like it kind of makes sense that they're the child of the succubus, but then again, it's like, well, why is it the same? Like it's boring. So let's go Thaumaturgy for sure. So I think we have a couple of them that are at will. I think, yeah, we just have so many charm powers already, I think I like Suggestion, because I think Suggestion is like a temptation, right? It's a powerful spell. It's like in our range, And it kind of plays into that Garden of Eden thing. Command we have, actually, already. That's one of the spells, but good thinking, Nuclear Wolf. I think Command should be at will. Because it's an action, right? So the Cambion has to spend its action doing that instead of attacking or doing anything else, right? Like, I think Command is at will. I would say Command and Thaumaturgy are both at will. And then 3 times per day each, I would say Suggestion. Not Hellish Rebuke, but I liked, I think Hold Person, maybe for 3 times per day. I could see Hold Person. It's a little generic. Doesn't quite have that evil feeling. I like Hex. I could see Hex being at will too, actually. Hex. Although maybe not Hex, because Hex is so similar to the Halo, you know? Caleb says Guidance. I could see Guidance. I would almost want to bake that into Fiendish Charm, but we are going to get rid of Fiendish Charm. So, I'm honestly more inclined to say Bane. You know, there's like a demonic curse on you if you try to go against them. I almost want to say Bane, Suggestion. I could see Hold Person. I want something a little more sinister feeling. We talk about Crown of Madness. Kind of like Crown of Madness, but I guess it's similar to Suggestion. So Hold Person was used in Supernatural all the time by demons. Okay, yeah, well then let's do that. I think Hold Person. I think Hold Person is good. I'm okay with that. Hold Person. And then I want one more good, one big powerful one. So Dominate Monster potentially. Circle of Death is too powerful. Hold Monster. Contact Other Plane. Plane Shift is 7th level, but it's only one way, right? Power Word Stun. Foresight Imprisonment. Banishment. I kind of like Banishment, but it would send you to the Demi-Plane, right? Remove Curse. Major Image, maybe? Ooh, Fear. I forgot about Fear. Let's do Fear. How does Major Image work? Because that might be that illusory power we were talking about, Caleb. Major Image. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Ooh, a Smite is kind of fun, actually. Major Image creates the image of an object or creature. It's completely real, including sound, smells, and temperature, appropriate to the thing depicted. As you're within range of the illusion, you use your action to cause the image to move. Yeah, I think Major Image is kind of cool. Let's look at the Smites. They're paladins usually, right? Branding. I like Branding Smite is kind of cool. 2nd level. Yeah, let's look at Branding Smite. Putting a brand on someone feels very demonic to me. Branding Smite. Blink, Blur, Burning Hands. Where's Branding Smite? Oh, here it is. But it would deal radiant damage, right? It would presumably deal fire damage. Branding Smite. Yeah, let's go Fear, Major Image. Fear, Major Image, Branding Smite. Deals fire damage instead of radiant. Plane Shift. Ego Whip. I don't know that one. Is that a what's Ego Whip? I mean, I love the sound of that. Ego Whip. I'm not familiar with that one. I was just going out the PHB, But really, I should have D&D Beyond up, I guess. My computer just doesn't like to have a bunch of things running while I'm streaming. Ego Whip. Is that psionics? It feels like it might be psionics. I like Ego Whip, though. Whip? Yeah, it's Unearthed Arcana. Yeah, Ego Whip is cool. It's a little bit, I could see it, actually. It feels a little psionic-y, but, like, I love the flavor of that, right? Of, do you know who I am? Yeah. Suffer disadvantage on attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws, and can't cast spells. Yeah. I don't hate that. I feel like we have a lot of once per day ones, though. Maybe let's move Major Image or Fear down one. So we have like 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have 1, 2, 3. So let's move one of these down. What do you think? I think maybe Branding Smite could be... Thank you, Caleb. Ooh, ignores fire resistance. That's cool. Branding Smite. Deals fire damage. Instead of radiant, and ignores fire resistance. Actually, let's do this. Let's say that the Halo ignores fire resistance. I think that's kind of cool. Great. Definitely an old psionic spell. So do we think then that Ego and then Ego Whip goes here? Yeah, let's go Ego Whip. That's a lot. I feel like that's plenty. I mean, already that makes them way more powerful, right? Update abilities or add ability, yeah, innate spellcasting. Yeah, already that's huge. Oh, I want to make those italicized. Formatting is boring. Formatting boring. Okay, here we go. Uh-oh, sneeze. Excuse me. Woof. Okay. Sneezing is boring. There we go. All right. That's innate spellcasting. Nice. Uh-oh. Sneeze number 2. Excuse me again. Okay. Let's see. So let's talk about that mantle. I want to call it like the Hellfire Halo or like Hellish something. I forget. Yeah, it's called like Soulfire Mantle in 4th edition, which is like maybe a little much, but like I like Mantle is cool. I just like Halo. Hellfire Halo might be a little bit alliterative, but I do like alliteration. So let's say Hellfire Halo. Unless someone's got a better. Hellfire Halo. The Cambion is protected. Cambion is protected by a Hellfire Halo. By a Halo of Hellfire. Halo of Hellfire. Hence the name. When a... I want to see how the Rimraz phrases it. So, as much as I harp on about... Ooh, Brimstone Shield is cool. As much as I harp on about... what was I going to say? Fiendish Authority is pretty good, too. Ooh. I mean, I think I want to describe the literal Halo itself, but I do like something like Authority is good. A creature that touches the Rimraz or hits it with a melee attack while within 5 feet of it takes 10 fire damage. Okay, so as much as I harp on about like getting the what was I gonna say? As making sure that each monster is like unique and has its own combat powers. I am a huge proponent of stealing wording from other powers. If you have powers that do similar things, right? You like I'm one of those weirdos who like wants to make sure the language is as close to, you know, sort of like standard 5e writing as possible. So I like both of those. I think shield implies it's a thing. I don't think it's actually like, it doesn't protect them. So I guess saying is protected by maybe is misleading, but like I think it's something, it's retributive, right? Like I almost just like fiendish. I want it to be a halo though, like Halo of Retribution. Ooh, Abyssal Authority is cool. Retribution. Because I think it's less about like it protecting them, right? So like is yeah, I guess it is kind of protection, but it doesn't make them harder to hit, right? It's like it hits you back. It is, yeah, alliteration is I can't help myself sometimes. So here I'm forcing myself not to do Halo of Hellfire or Hellfire Halo. When a creature hits the Cambion with a melee attack, it takes... How did you word this before, Caleb? So is it automatic damage there? Save against retaliation attack, okay. It must make a DC... What is the DC here? It's like 14? 14 dexterity saving throw. Or take... We'll say 2d6 maybe? Yeah. 2d6 fire damage. And then when a creature makes a ranged, or hits with a ranged attack, hits the Cambion with a ranged attack, hits the Cambion with a ranged attack, it must make a DC 14. Well, then does it... I don't think it has to make a saving throw. I think like because if you don't take damage from it, right? The ranged attack, the idea was that like then the halo transfers to you, right? When a creature hits the Cambion with a ranged attack, the creature becomes cursed, right? Yeah, the creature becomes cursed, or not cursed, but like, you know, like they get the halo on them, right? When a creature hits the Cambion with a ranged attack, they... How does Fairy Fire word it? Because it's similar to Fairy Fire, I think, right? Oh, I see. Advantage or other bonus against a ranged strike. Against it is what you meant. I kind of like the idea that it like highlights them and makes them easier to hit. So let me look at how Fairy Fire words it. I gotta scroll back down. People are talking. The ranged version is the halo targeting the enemy. I think if you don't have to make a saving throw, right? Then I mean if you're not gonna take damage, then I feel like you don't have to make a saving throw, right? Like that seems like there's a chance that like okay, it's like double indemnity almost. That's not the right word for that, of course, because I'm on stream, so I can't speak eloquently. Fairy Fire, Fairy Fire. Yeah, advantage to hit and can't benefit from invisibility. I think that's right. Oh, yeah, you pulled it up. Thank you. Thanks, David. But how does it say? It's like, any creature in the area when the spell is cast is outlined in light if it fails a dexterity saving throw. Okay. When a creature hits the Cambion with a ranged attack, that creature is outlined. That creature is outlined in hellish red light for until the start of the creature's, until the end of the creature's next turn. Next turn. Any attack roll made against the effect. Any attack roll made against the affected creature has advantage and has advantage. Any attack roll the Cambion makes. Ooh, what if it's any attack roll a fiend makes against the affected creature has advantage, and the creature cannot benefit from invisibility. Right? So if it's working with minions or whatever, fiendish minions, I think that's cool. Halo of Retribution. The Cambion is protected by a halo of Hellfire. When a creature hits the Cambion with a melee attack, it must make a DC 14 Dexterity saving throw. Or I like adding Charisma in there, actually. I think that's kind of cool. Oh, that's Fiendish Charm shit. Halo. So I think you go Cha like that. Add ability. I dig that. DC 14 Dexterity saving throw, or take 10, 2d6 plus 3 fire damage. When a creature, fire damage that ignores damage that ignores resistance. This damage ignores fire resistance. This damage ignores fire resistance. Yeah, there we go. It's the Cambion with a melee attack. Take 10, 2d6 plus 3 fire damage. This damage ignores fire resistance. It's not half on a save, on a success, though, so that's kind of what helps balance it out. When a creature hits the Cambion with a ranged attack, that creature is outlined in hellish red light. Until the end of the creature's next turn, any attack roll a fiend makes against that creature has advantage, and the creature cannot benefit from being invisible. Cannot benefit from being invisible. Cannot benefit from being invisible. There we go. Okay, cool. That's Halo of Retribution. Love it. Okay, and then we wanted to... Oh, yeah, we want to talk about these different abilities. So I'm going to remove Fiendish Charm. I think we can keep Fiendish Charm in one version. I think Deceit has Fiendish Charm. Right? So, like, you know, Grozd. Like, example, like, Sires. Grozd. Confession, I hate that spelling. I don't like apostrophes in names personally, and something about like Grozd is just icky. Don't love it. Succubus / incubus. Well, it wouldn't be that, because in this case it would be specifically Archfiends. Fiendish Charm, I think we can keep as is and have it just be tied to Deceit. Conquest. Okay, so we need like ideas for these kinds of powers. So something that is like a unique combat power, right? That like, I guess in this case, I think it could be replicated somewhere else, right? So it's like, it could be something that like the Fiendish Charm is also in the Succubus. You know what I mean? So like, I don't think these ones have to be unique, because I think we have the Halo of Retribution is like its unique thing. So. Wait a minute, I think I did the formatting wrong on that. I think that the spells should be italicized, not the times per day you can use it. Let's find out. My new desk is a little bit cramped for space. Well, it's not a new desk, it's just a new arrangement. I moved my computer from where it used to be, and now I have the camera kind of no longer attached to the computer. And so, like, because I used to be sitting forward like this all the time, and it was just fucking at my back. So now I can sit back and still kind of access my keyboard, but it's taken away a lot of my desk space to do that. Yeah, I think it's... Yeah, I have it backwards. Okay. Dumb formatting no one cares about. So we need a power for Conquest. A tail attack like the Pseudo Dragons for the comedy ability. It could be. It could be. I almost want it to be a little bit more like fucking like it almost like Conquest to me feels like you're like marshaling, you know, armies and stuff. A little more military, but I don't hate the idea of like, honestly, like a tail attack on its own. I don't hate the idea of, frankly, you know, they could just also have a tail attack. I find the spear attack to be a little bit meh, but I mean, yeah, I don't know, like maybe a tail attack is cool. But something that's more like I almost want to look at the like, oh shit, there, add ability, and then do this. That's better. I want to look at like the Hobgoblin Commander, or like, you know, something like that. Like they have some ability to like marshal troops. If it's Conquest, to me, it's like about war. Yeah, leadership. For 1 minute, the Hobgoblin can utter a special command or warning whenever a hostile creature that can see it within 30 feet of it makes an attack roll or a saving throw. The creature can add a d4 to its roll, provided it can hear and understand the Hobgoblin. The creature can benefit from only one leadership die at a time. This effect, so it's kind of like a what was I gonna say? Just kind of like bless, right? Something a little more fun than that. Like, I like, if it's conquest, it's either about bolstering allies or it's about terrifying enemies, right? Like, you're kind of like this dread conqueror, you know? So, it already has fear, so I feel like it should be about bolstering allies, right? Commanding strike, ooh, yeah, like allowing other people to make attacks. I don't hate that. It does mean you then have to the advantage of David's suggestion is that then you don't have to package it with minions. You know, like it can just use a tail attack. It doesn't need to have an army with it. That's the advantage of a fear-based power, is that yeah, because Commander Strike is like the old Warlord power, Nuclear Wolf, right, where you could just make another player make an attack. Which I don't hate, but it doesn't quite have the like fiendish kind of majesty that I'm looking for here, you know. Like I wonder if a fear power is what we're looking for, because fear can work. What if it's both? What if it's like it has kind of like the Halo, where it has a fear effect against non-fiends, but fiends in the area get boosted, right? Yeah, an area effect. I might even take fear off the list of spells then, because if we have this, then we don't really need it there. So let's remove... Well, we still have suggestion. I'll leave it. An area effect that frightens the Cambion's enemies, all creatures that aren't fiends, and bolsters fiends in the area. You know, extra hit points... You know, D4 to attacks, whatever. Yeah. Because again, you don't want it, like, you could just pop it off as fear, right? If the Cambion is alone, Cambion of Conquest could do that, right? But if it has allies in it, that makes it more powerful. So it isn't just like a zero-sum game. Okay, so Shadow is like the kind of dexterity analog, and it's all about like stealth and hiding and secrecy, right? Well, we have secrets, but it's more about like stealth and darkness and that kind of stuff. So, trying to think like what's a cool, like Globe of Darkness exists, but it feels like, yeah, kind of like a Bless for fiends and a Bane for non-fiends. Totally, something like that. I like that. Shadow... Like, so there's, again, it's easy just to, like, it creates a Globe of Darkness, right? Hey, what's up, Hunter? You're good. Thanks for coming, man. We're talking about different potential powers to give Cambions based on which Archfiend sired them. So we did Conquest, and now we're on Shadow. What's like an interesting spin on a Globe of Darkness? Like, my instinct is that, like, you know, no one's dark vision functions, or, like... I mean, I guess you could do a similar thing where it's like a Globe of Darkness around the fiend, around the Cambion, but only fiends can see in the dark with dark vision, right? It's like darkness that affects... Ooh, what if it's like a blindness power? That's kind of interesting, right? Like it blinds everyone. So it's like Shadow, but it's Shadow because you can't see it. I kind of like that. Or, you know, it could be Pass Without Trace. It could be like a utility thing where it's not actually combat. It's like... Could be combat. It could be... I was thinking about, yeah, some sort of Shadow stealth power. Slink away to regroup and find superior tactics. Yeah, it's like an escape. I was thinking about the monk's Shadow Step. Right. Yeah, there you go, Hunter. Yeah, exactly. That, like, something that allows them to teleport through shadows. Something that allows them to teleport through shadows. Like, a more powerful version of the Shadow Step. A more powerful version of the Shadow Step. Like, more like Dimension Door. Oh, the Shadow Step is so powerful, y'all. Shadow Step is one of those all or nothing type spells where you have to, like, decide, you know, do I let them just teleport all over the place forever, or do I never let them teleport? You know, that's one of my big problems with it, is that, like, you have to make determinations about what's dark light, you know, what's darkness or dim light, you know, and like people are saying, well, that person's a shadow, that person's a shadow. It's like, well, right, but that's not actually darkness or dim light. It needs to be dark for you to be able to do that, you know. But then every single time you, like, the minute that you get a shadow monk in your party, ooh, the Banderhob, I can look up the Banderhob. Every single time, you know, once you have a shadow monk, then they want to do every single mission at night, you know. Banderhob. I look it up on my phone, because if I do it on my computer, it'll get weird. Banderhob. Oh, shoot. Okay. Shadow Stealth. While in dim light or darkness, the Banderhob can take the hide action as a bonus action. Yeah, I don't hate that. It's a little... Compared to, like, you know, driving your enemies before you, it's a little, you know, underwhelming. More powerful version. I think it's some kind of teleport. I think it's similar to Shadow Step. Death is interesting. Death kind of pertains to, it's sort of the inverted version of Constitution in my world. Because also, basically, these 6 aspects of in my world, it's Yogg, but I think, you know, they're broadly, like, sort of evil domains, right? They correspond to the 6 gods, and the 6 gods are each based off an ability score. So there's a god of strength, and a god of dexterity, and a god of constitution, a god of intelligence, a god of wisdom, a god of charisma. And you pray to those gods when you want to exemplify those virtues, right? Like, when you need strength, you pray to Bor. And so Yogg has their sort of, like, 6 aspects that are the, like, kind of dark inversion. Oh, does it? I just saw that one. Maybe there's more. I will look. I dismissed it too quickly, Nukerwall. Why can I not find it? Like, yeah, I'd have to get it on here, which is a little bit of a pain. Let me see if I can quick pull it up. But I think it's something like a teleport is what makes sense to me. Oh, this is fine. This is loading okay. For some reason, it was loading really slowly before. D&D Beyond. So death is interesting because, like, my immediate instinct, right, is that they summon undead or whatever, right? But that, again, it feels kind of necromancery. It could be a thing like when they kill someone, maybe they get something. When they reduce someone to 0 hit points, they get a bunch of their life. Or they collect their soul. Yeah, when they reduce someone to 0 hit points, they collect the target's soul. While the Cambion lives, the target cannot be resurrected, cannot be revived or resurrected. It's kind of interesting, right? The Bannerhop does have Shadow Step. Nice. And that's what I want. Thanks, Nukerwolf, for doing my reconnaissance for me. I'm going to check it right now. Yeah, Shadow Step. Yep. So I think we take that. I think that works. I really like this death power. I think that's really interesting. Cambion shouting, "Do you know who my father is?" It can limit actions the foe takes. That's kind of fun. Makes a will-o-wisps or other spirit undead. Could be that too. Yeah. They reduce someone to 0 hit points. They collect the target's soul. Will-o-wisps is pretty powerful. You know. Secrets is interesting. Secrets. So secrets kind of like Vecna stuff, right? Like they is it like telepathy or read thoughts? Yeah, that's what I like about it, Hunter, right? Is that it's like it implies this thing where
Because death to me feels very like, you know, necromancer and lich. So it's like, how do fiends relate to death? And it's all about souls, right? And like collecting them, and like, you know, kind of in the race between. Oof, that seems pretty strong. They can destroy the soul to regain hit points. Maybe that's pretty wild. They can steal the. They can destroy the soul to regain hit points. I mean, it already feels pretty strong, right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Nuker was like stealing a spell slot for secrets. Again, feels very Vecna. I'm trying to figure out like how does it work. Like this Cambion's already got a reaction, so it shouldn't be a reaction to being targeted by a spell. It could be an action, right? Like it pulls something out from your mind. It would only target. It would be a little conditional because you'd need a prepared spell, which I think is only a couple of classes. I guess it could just be a spell slot, right? Like they don't know how to cast a particular spell. Maybe it's once the. Well, but if the spell's already been cast. Yeah, we could College of Whispers. That's not a bad idea, David. I like the idea of forgetting, because that feels very, like, you know, Vecna adjacent. Let's look at the College of Whispers. I remember it being a lot about, this being a lot of, like, manipulation. Which I don't hate, but Words of Terror, Mantle of Whispers, you adopt a humanoid's persona. Capture its shadow using your reaction. Retain this shadow. Ironically, kind of similar to what we have. Dark magic into your words and tap into a creature's deepest fear. It's a lot of fear stuff. I like psychic damage is interesting. Spell used on it is forgotten. Yeah, I kind of think that's interesting. I was thinking that, or like a psionic thing where like it has telepathy, and whenever it what about for madness? It has telepathy. Like the Cambion has telepathy to a certain range. Whenever the Cambion, like once per round, when the Cambion speaks, when the Cambion speaks with a non-fiend, they take 1d6 psychic damage. That is like establishing any kind of connection to the fiend. Like, here's the problem though, is that I think these have to be actions if they're gonna replace Fiendish Charm. You know? Do these still work if they're just like random traits? Because that was the idea, was to give it a different combat action. These are all like not all of them, but like shadow is movement, right? Death is a reaction. Madness, like, or it's not a reaction. Death is it is kind of a reaction, but it's like a trait. I want these to be like discrete actions, because Fiendish Charm is one. The area of effect one is. I really like some of these ideas. Like I love the idea of the fiend using the secret as leverage. You know. I mean, maybe it's okay. I'm just trying to think. Like, remove a spell from a player's mind. They cannot use the spell again until they bargain another spell back and provide some kind of info. Yeah, that's it. Because then it's an action. There you go, Hunter. The like Cambion forces a character, a creature, to make a an intelligence saving throw. On a failure, the Cambion steals a spell from their memory. The Cambion can choose to give the spell back as a free action. I like the idea, like, you wouldn't normally put this in a monster stat block, but I like the implication that you're going for there, Hunter, where it's like they can't use this spell again until they bargain for another spell, right? That like the Cambion can give the spell back, but only if it gets something of equal value in return. That wouldn't really be in a spell like in a stat block, but I think that's like the implication of the power, right? The Cambion can only have one spell stolen at a time. Can only steal one spell from a single creature at once. Like, it can have any number of spells, but it can only have one. Like, it can't take more than one of your spells, right? Yeah, I like that. The Madness one I think is cool. I think I sort of would prefer it to be an action. So, like, how do you do Madness beyond just like giving them a random long-term Madness, which feels very Eldritch? Like, how do you give them? How do you make it an action and not like an entirely different like set of powers? Like, I like the idea that even like hearing their voice is scary. Maybe it's kind of what you were saying before, Caleb, where it's like a stun effect, right? Like don't you know who I am? Like, he calls upon like the power of their sire, right? The Cambion speaks the name of their patron. All creatures within a certain radius must make a DC 14 charisma saving throw. Or be, you know, I don't want to say stunned, because that's pretty powerful. But the idea of like saying Mephistopheles, right? Like just invoking them, driving you mad, right? Or be stunned. Maybe it's much lower. Maybe it's like a DC 11. Even just like hearing it can stun you for a round. Or be stunned. On a success, the character. Yeah. So Caleb, that's a power from 4th edition that I actually really like. It's called Dazed. They got rid of it for 5th, but it's a shame because it was like you could either move or act, but not both. It's somewhat preserved in the spell Slow, but Slow has like a huge pile of things. I like the idea of bringing back Dazed. It must make a DC 11 charisma saving throw or become dazed. I think stunned for 1 turn isn't that bad. Because like the Mind Flayer's got that, right? It's got Mind Blast or whatever. But you also take a pile of psychic damage when you do it. Yeah, I liked Dazed too, because it instantly gives you this like tactical question, you know? That like it's a nice way to slow somebody down. Mind Blast is be stunned for 1 minute. Yeah, so I think it's be stunned for 1 round. Right, I like Dazed, but it's a little much to explain all here, right? A creature that fails or that succeeds on the saving throw gains 1 short-term madness. It's like, yeah, you could still function, but you're gonna have like hearing the name of the fiend is gonna hit you now, or it's gonna hit you later, right? I would really like to make the Shadow and the Death one a little more of an action. So I think Death is like the Cambion targets an unconscious creature within range. And steals their soul so like it isn't a reaction. They don't just instantly grab it. It's like if anyone is dead or unconscious near them, they can pull the soul out of the body and steals their soul. While the Cambion lives, the target cannot be revived or resurrected. I just want these to be actions, right? Resurrected. They can destroy the soul to regain hit points. I'm not familiar with the Night Watcher. Hit points. And then Shadow. How do we make this like stealth invisibility thing
Something that allows them to teleport through shadows, a more powerful version of the shadow step. Like, I mean, it could just be an action to do it, right? I mean, it could be like a magic ring thing where they turn invisible, like when in... Yeah. The Cambion can turn invisible and... in dim light or darkness. Yeah, what if, like, they turn invisible and they don't uninvisible as long as they're in dim light or darkness? I think that's it. It takes them an action to turn it on, but then they're invisible, right? You can hear them and stuff, but even if you have dark vision, it doesn't reveal them. It isn't just that in darkness, you know, they're hiding. It's that they become invisible in dim light or darkness. Like, they are only, like, and obviously I'd reword this, right? They're only revealed in light. Like, you'd have to get out a torch or cast light or do something like that to reveal them. Yeah, I don't mind giving them a damage bonus. That's fine. I mean, they're going to get an advantage bonus anyway, right? Like, so advantage. I can't talk. They're going to get advantage on their attack rolls anyway. So I actually don't necessarily think a damage bonus is necessary there because they don't get revealed when they attack. They stay invisible until there's light. You know. That's cool. Because, again, I like these as, like, changing the tactics a little bit, right? That, like, secrets are all about stealing the spells and negotiating. Death is about that, too. Conquest is, like, bolstering and driving you away. Shadow is, like... Yeah, I think that's cool. I'm into that. Okay, well, I'll mechanize that stuff later. That'll go up on our Patreon, which, speaking of... I think that's going to conclude us for today, everybody. And then we'll talk about the Patreon in just a second. Thank you so much for coming out. Let me go through the changes that we made. We first improved the spell-like abilities. So our new Cambion has a bunch of new spell powers. Command, Thaumaturgy, Bane, Branding Smite, Hold Person, Suggestion, Ego Whip, Fear, Major Image, and Plane Shift. Ooh, let me go do this, actually, in the formatting. Let me go do this. That and that. There you go. Add ability. Change. Sorry. Formatting. We gave it the Halo of Retribution, which I think is kind of its sexiest new power, protected by this Halo of Hellfire, and it can like blast people who are near it with fire, and it can like mark faraway targets as well. And then we also brainstormed a bunch of new powers based on who the fiendish sire of the particular Cambion is. So we have the Conquest power that frightens their enemies and boosts their allies. You have the Shadow power, lets them turn invisible in dim light or darkness and stay that way. We have Death, where they get to steal someone's soul and they can bargain for it back. Secrets, where they can force a creature to make to forget one of their spell slots and once again bargain for it back. We have Madness, where they speak the true name of their patron, stunning or driving you mad. And then, of course, we have Fiendish Charm, which we are just sort of moving over from the standard Cambion into the Deceit Cambion. Great, yeah, that is our redesigned Cambion. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. That's going to be our stream. Thank you, Hunter Fox, for all of your help. Big shout out to everyone who showed up today. Thanks to David. He's always here right at the beginning. I love to see it. Thanks to Caleb and Nuker Wolf, and then Hunter for coming in at the end. Lots of great suggestions here. A lot of things that we incorporated. I feel like this one was a very crowdsourced session. Got the smites and Ego Whip, a lot of the spells. And then a lot of these last powers in particular, I feel like were inspired by things that the chat said. So if you like this stream, please check out the rest of our content. You can subscribe to the channel, click the link below. Please like the video too before you take off, because that really helps bring us up into the in the algorithm. You can find me on Twitter. I am at ProDMTimothy. We've got a Discord. We've got a Patreon. If you are interested in this version of the Cambion, which will include the stats for all the Fiendish Sire powers, please consider subscribing to our Patreon. It's $1 a month to get access to all of this stuff. If you're at $5, you can get access to the Trove, which is our archive of all the previous monsters and adventures and stuff. That's for $5 and up patrons. So please go check out the Patreon. That's a great way to support me continuing to make this kind of content. That's really the only reason I'm able to do as much streaming and as much like tweeting and content creation and the podcast and stuff is because I get that support on Patreon. So please consider joining our campaign there. We will be back, not on Saturday, unfortunately, or Sunday, because I'm a little busy this weekend.
I'm hanging out with some friends on Saturday, and on Sunday I have a game during our normal world building stream time. So we'll be back next Tuesday with more adventure prep right here at 2 p.m. PST on Tuesday. I'm not sure what we'll be working on then, actually. Might be home game stuff, might be Mansionscape. We'll have to see what happens then. But that'll be next Tuesday. So, again, thank you everyone for coming out. I hope that this was at least somewhat fun. It's basically an excuse for me to get my work done, right? Because this has to be done for the Patreon. So it's a nice way to, like, make some content, but also work on my own stuff. But until next time, thanks for watching, and happy adventuring. Gotta turn off my camera here. Hold on. Okay, thanks, guys. I normally have another screen I go to, but I forget for this one I don't. Okay, talk to you later, guys.